Hello there to all my followers of darkness, shadow scavengers, and villain aficionados. Welcome, bienvenue. Here I am, your good old Lord of Shadows, and this is none other than one of my good old-fashioned movie review time. And today I'm going to review Avatar: Fire and Ash, the third installment in the Avatar movie series, directed yet again by the legendary James Cameron himself. I finally got a chance to see the movie yesterday, so here I am, guys, giving you my overall thoughts about the movie itself. Now, try to be as spoiler-free as possible, because trust me, even though this movie had some issues, even for myself, this is still a spectacle that needs to be witnessed on the big screen. Believe me, it needs to. But the overall spoiler-free premise, let's put it that way, spoiler-free premise of the movie is basically you have this conflict on Pandora that is basically escalating for Jake and Natari's family. Once they meet this like new but also far more evil and aggressive Na'vi tribe called the Ash Clan, led by the ruthless Varang. I also even like the name, Varang. Now, right off the bat, I have to tell you guys, the story itself was actually way more interesting than the second movie. I mean, at least for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. Avatar: The Way of Water, I liked it for what it was. I liked it from the beginning to the very end. Even though I still had some issues with it and everything, I still liked it. But story-wise, honestly, I was way more invested in Fire and Ash than what I was in the second one, But I guess like one of the biggest reasons why, with not simply with the characters and everything that was happening, the battles and the emotions and darker tone and everything, but I think one of the reasons why I was more invested, because this time the stakes were actually even way more higher. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, like, this movie itself, it felt like, it was like this grand final battle, or should I say this grand final climax, basically, of the entire, Avatar series. That's one of the reasons why I'm saying the stakes are higher, because this time it didn't just simply involve J.K. and Neytiri's family, but involved almost everyone on Pandora. Because like in this story, you basically have the Colonel, of course, returning as always. Seriously, this guy really never dies. Honestly, But anyway, like in this, you have Colonel, returning in this movie, and he's aligning himself with the ruthless Varang, leader of the Ash Clan and everything. And just with that, you have the stakes being higher than ever. Because basically, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. You know what they say: double the villains, double the fun. And it really was. But like because this. Also, I would say it's one of the reasons why I really, really enjoyed Fire and Ash, itself, because like I said, the stakes this time are way, way higher. Because, like I mentioned before, it doesn't involve just simply Jake and Neytiri and their children, but also involves every single clan on Pandora, and the overall fate of Pandora itself, and which for me personally is one of the I will also add as like one of my praises for the third installment, in general. Now, the characters, every single one. And now, usually when you have a movie like this, which again, let's be honest, it's filled with all sorts of characters, like new ones and old ones. Some of them returning, from the second movie and everything. And every single one of them was actually interesting. From the main characters, from the supporting characters, from the minor characters, the villains. Every single character for me was really, really interesting this time. Like every single one of them, had their moments, their arcs, their overall battles. If it's like, with someone else or with themselves, especially with Neytiri, being grief, because one of her sons being lost, in the second movie and everything. Also, Spider, which honestly in the second movie I actually didn't quite care about him. But in this movie, which, when it comes to Spider, I actually start to care about this character. Even Kiri for me was far more interesting. Voiced again by Sigourney Weaver. Of course, even Kiri in this movie was actually far more interesting than in the second one. And with that, like I said, even I cannot even believe why I'm saying this, but like even the fucking Water Clan, even they were way more interesting in this movie than what they were, in the second one. I mean, I don't know, because honestly, I mean, in the second movie, the Water Clan for me were interesting, but like the way how the story was progressing and everything, they were like, okay, they seemed cool and everything, but there was nothing about him that really kept me going or at least interested. But in this movie, I guess because like the stakes were higher and because like the danger and threat that was involved around the story, I guess like, that was kind of like the reason why they were actually far more interesting to me. In this one, unlike the second one, I think at least that's the way how I see it. Now, of course, as always, one of my standouts for this movie, besides, of course, the villains, besides them, I have to say, out of all the characters, I would say the standouts for me were Neytiri, Kiri, and Spider. I mean, look, Jake Sully, played, of course, great by Sam Worthington, as always. He was great and everything, but the standouts for me was definitely Zoe Saldana as Neytiri. I mean, like in other previous two movies, she delivered one of the most amazing performances through motion capture and everything. Like, I really felt every single part of the character's arc in this, in this third movie, starting, like I said, with her relationship with Jake, with her grief, with her anger and hatred, her conflict with Varang and everything. Like, she really was not just an interesting character, but also delivered an amazing performance. Sigourney Weaver is Kiri. Like, like so many questions. Again, I don't want to go into deep spoilers, but there are some revelations and twists surrounding Kiri's character that in the second movie, I actually like none of the questions were answered. But in this one, they were answered. And I have to tell you the revelations for Kiri's character, the twists and everything. I was really surprised because for me personally, it worked. Now, some people might think like, it's a little bit predictable in a way, but the way still how they explained it, the timing itself, and the way how they strategically created and where to put like this particular revelation throughout the movie, it was really well done. So even Kira's character and Sigourney Weaver's performance, was also fantastic. And again, the third one. I mean, I like I like the older child of Jake Sully and Neytiri. He was cool and everything. But the third standout for me was Spider. I really loved his overall character throughout the third movie. I love his relationship with with the Colonel, which of course is not a big spoiler because it was revealed in the second movie. So that's not a big thing. But one of the things I always loved that I really loved about Spider's character is basically not simply him as a character, but his relationship with Kiri. Again, I don't want to go into deep spoiler territory, but I think like a lot of people will like their overall chemistry and relationship. So yeah, those three characters out of all of them, I would definitely say they're like my standouts for me. Like every single moment or character arc in general for me worked, and I was really invested in them, 100%. I mean, again, all the other characters, every single one of them were interesting. Even like the human characters were interesting, as well. But the standouts for me were those three, But again, it doesn't mean, others were bad as well. No. Now, going to one of the things that, of course, I always love to talk about, as I like to call it, double the villains, double the fun, because this time you not only have the Colonel returning, but this time you have a new villain in Fire and Ash movie, which of course is the Ash leader of the Ash clan. And I have to tell you, since the very first moment they revealed, and James Cameron, this guy, he wasn't waiting to create this kind of like build up to them and everything. No, immediately at the beginning of the movie, boom, there they are. The Ash clan basically attacking Jake, Neytiri, and the others. I just simply was kind of in a way surprised, but also I was kind of giggling, wow, James Cameron, he didn't waste any time at all, And again, from the very first moment, I would tell you, I really found them interesting more than the water people, And Varang was a very interesting villain, I really like her, her overall character, the overall desire about learning. Learning how to deal, with human weapons, or as she said, again, it's a minor spoiler, but how to make thunder, basically. I really liked her relationship with the Colonel as well. The overall alliance and something a little bit more, but again, I don't want to go into that territory. And the overall, and one of the things I will say about Varang is what I really liked is her conviction. The overall like her the conviction and the overall desire and vision, and the way how she basically and the way how he she basically how they basically explored her hatred for Awa. Let's put it that way, because like and I also would say I really liked her backstory. Like how she became who she is now, and how like her clan became like obsessed with fire, with basically rock and stone and fire. That was also kind of like interesting. And I would say out of all the tribes that we've seen so far, these guys are definitely like the darkest and the most evil and aggressive clans on Pandora like we have seen like so far. And I really liked it, because so far of all the clans that we have seen, every single one of them, like like were like either gray zone or positive, and everything. We never actually seen like like a dark side, like a dark side, like Navi species or something. So I'm really happy, that what we got with the Ash Clan and Varang as well. But now of course I can talk more and more, a lot more about Varang and everything. But overall, I really liked her as a villain. I would say I really wish they could have explored her character a little bit more, But for what we got, I was still satisfied, But I will say this: at first I thought like she's gonna be like the main villain, but then after later on, with everything with the Colonel and everything, she basically kind of say she was demoted into a secondary villain, in a way, and that's kind of like one of my nitpicky negatives when it comes to her character, because I really liked her. I really like her character. I like her rivalry between Aetiri and her. I really like, her overall backstory, the mythology around her, and also, basically her character itself, And I don't remember her the actress's name, but the Ona Chaplin, she gave an amazing performance as Varang, 100%. Now the Colonel, the same good old fashioned Colonel as we saw him, like in the second and the third movie, second and the first movie. Like he is this like good old fashioned military villain as he always was. But I will say this: James Cameron this time actually did some really interesting character development on the Colonel, especially like I said, involving Spider and his relationship with him and everything, which I really found interesting. But overall, one of the things I really liked was the overall relationship and alliance that Varang and the Colonel had. I kind of like, it kind of made me think like, what, like those two really, really are made for each other. Her like their overall goals and desires, and also, Stephen Lang, playing the Colonel, like he just simply, great as always. He was simply great as always. So overall, both villains for me were interesting. Although I was kind of hoping to get more of Rang, but overall, what we got, I really liked. In general overall. Now the CGI, oh my god, the CGI on this movie, just like in the second one, in the first one, like it's just simply pure gold. Like seeing this movie on the big screen just for the CGI is just enough to give you a spectacle. I really have no complaints with the CGI. I mean, like maybe like maybe sometimes with Spider when he's like talking with the Navi, like either like Jake or Neytiri or Kiri. Like there are times when like the Navi are with humans that you can kind of see like the how like the usage of CGI basically and everything. But when you have just those characters alone, it's a real proper treat, a real spectacle. Like the overall details they put on those characters, the creatures, the overall landscape, like the CGI in this movie, just like in the previous two, is a complete spectacle. Like I like besides those like nitpicky negatives, like with the when there are humans and the Navi characters together, you kind of notice, but overall, pure gold, absolute pure gold. Like no big complaints of the CGI, absolute spectacle. Also, the battles. I have to tell you, like the battles in this movie, again, really well done, pure spectacle. And I told you, it really felt like this grand finale of Avatar. This like Avatar movie series. Like when I was watching this movie, the overall battles, it was like I was watching Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, or Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, or like Harry Potter, Deadly Hallows. Like it really felt like this grand finale type of battles on a much more higher scale, and I really, really love that, especially towards the grand finale. That battle itself, oh my god, it was mesmerizing, really well done, well CGI-ish choreographed and everything, like the battles just like the CGI, pure spectacle, but in a very, very positive way. Also, the score, oh my god, the score itself also is, I would say, one of the most powerful and positive elements I have for this movie. I mean, the music composed by Simon Franklin, he did really an amazing job composing the score. I mean, the battles, the serious moments, the darker moments, when they're all the family together, if it's positivity or nature or suffering, or when it comes to the villains, the score itself, basically makes every moment, every scene very extremely powerful. Because we all know the score is always one of the main ingredients to make a movie going, to make a movie even more powerful and effective. And I can tell you, Simon Franklin, what he did, he was amazing. So again, the score beautifully made, really, really powerful. Now, speaking of emotions, darker tone, and everything. First and foremost, I have to say, just like in the first two movies, the world building itself, the lore. Again, James Cameron, continues to expand on the world of Pandora, and I really, really liked what I got. From being introduced to new clans, to new species, new landscapes, and everything. The way how they expanded the lore of Pandora, I really, really liked seeing that. Also, with this movie, oh my god, is way more heavier on darker tone and emotions, unlike the previous two. Way more, and I have to tell you, it works. It definitely works, which also combines with what I've said before, that the stakes this time are higher. Way more higher. I mean, there were actually a very few times when it comes to emotions. There were actually very few times I actually almost shed a tear. I mean, I in the end I didn't cry, but I felt it here inside. I did felt it. The overall weight of the emotions that were happening throughout the movie. I mean, again, when it comes to James Cameron, I would definitely say one of his most biggest specialties was always bringing this powerful emotions on the big screen. And again, with Avatar: Fire and Ash, he fucking delivered. Darker tone, same thing. It also connects with the stakes being higher this time. It really, with so many elements that were happening throughout the entire movie, this movie really felt it was the darkest of the all three of them together. It really felt like that. It really felt like that. And I welcome that with open arms. I really do, because it really fucking works. Now, with all that being said, here are my overall negatives of this movie. Okay, I mean, again, it really breaks my heart for basically talking about negatives for any movie in general. I always, because that's one of the reasons why I always try to dig up so many positives as I can, to make this movie sound way more positive. But sometimes, we all know that sometimes movies are not perfect, and most definitely Avatar: Fire and Ash, it is not that. It is not also a perfect movie, but so my overall negatives about this movie actually are basically, out of all of them, I would say one thing. It felt too long. The movie is over 3 hours long, and honestly, it felt like that. Okay, there were a lot of moments throughout the entire movie where it really felt oh my god, when this movie is gonna end. I mean, again, it didn't take me out of the movie, it didn't ruin the movie for me, but I will have to admit that it felt way too long. There were some moments and some scenes that personally, I would have suggested James Cameron to cut them out, basically, because it kind of felt a little bit too much or unnecessary. But which in the end, it kind of made me feel I was watching a director's cut. Not like a theatrical version. It felt like Avatar: Fire and Ash aka the director's cut. That's how I literally felt when I was watching it on the big screen. You know, so that I would say out of all of it, I would say that's kind of like my overall complaint, alongside some like nitpicky like things I've said before. Yeah. I mean, with that being said, it really felt like way too long. So I personally think they should have cut it. Maybe just a little bit. To make it a little bit short. But overall, again, it is a negative. But again, it didn't ruin the movie for me, and it didn't took me out at all. Now, one of the things I have to say before I go to the main score, one of the things I have to say is this movie, as I mentioned a few times from my review, this movie really felt like an ending, like an overall grand finale of this like Avatar story that was basically that was basically active from like the first movie till now. Like it really felt I was watching like the as an overall ending to this like Avatar trilogy and everything. Because and which also includes with what I mentioned a few times before, with the stakes being higher this time. So honestly, again, I know James Cameron said when it comes to Avatar 4 and 5, I know that he planned them way before with the first three as well. That he was planning to do 5 Avatar movies. Basically try to make it its own like version of Star Wars. Let's put it that way. But honestly, for what he delivered in Avatar Fire and Ash, I would say he could easily stop here, because it really felt like a satisfying ending or conclusion to this overall Avatar story. Because everything that we found, everything that was put inside this movie, and also it kind of gives you an idea why this movie could have been is actually over 3 hours long, because of James Cameron putting so much information, so much lore, so much twists and turns and revelations, so many questions answered, to kind of like basically, finish this like overall main storyline that was happening ever since the 2009, Avatar movie. So honestly, the way how it ended, I could definitely see this being like an overall conclusion to the overall Avatar series. Now again, he said that it all depends on the success of of this movie. If Avatar 4 and 5 are going to be made and everything. But honestly, if somehow he changes his mind, I will tell you, Avatar Fire and Ash would be a satisfying conclusion to this overall Avatar trilogy. Honestly, because everything that was happening and the way how the ending was set, the way how the ending was made. If he said, okay, that's it, I'm not going to do any more Avatar movies, honestly, I would have been completely satisfied, to be fair. And with that being said, I'm going to give Avatar Fire and Ash an 8.5 out of 10. Because like I said, my biggest, my like with all the nitpicky negatives I had, and the biggest one being like, it felt like a too long movie, being over 3 hours long. I think like, this is a fair score for Avatar Fire and Ash. I mean, I gave the first Avatar movie 9 out of 10. The second one was 8 out of 10. So this one is an 8.5 out of 10 for me, or like an overall upgrade to towards like, the second movie in general. So 8.5, I still think, it's a fair score for a movie like Avatar Fire and Ash. And with that being said, here I am, guys. I'm done with Avatar Fire and Ash. Fire and Ash. Here ends my review. You guys know the drill. Rate the video, comment, like, subscribe. Give me a personal overall thoughts and ideas. Like, if you have already seen Avatar Fire and Ash, what are your overall thoughts, comments, negatives? What you thought about, the new clan? What you thought about the Colonel, about Jake and Atari? Everything about Avatar Fire and Ash, just simply put in the comment section down below. And until then, stay tuned for more, guys. See you guys next time. Or as I like to say, Lord of Shadows, signing off. See you guys next time. Or as I like to say, later, fuckers.